As we get deeper into the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime, Mimikyu becomes more and more mysterious. It just kind of shuffles around and does whatever it wants. It kind of feels like at the end of the Mimikyu trial where you kind of see it running through the bushes, or also when you're trying to take a picture of it with the Pokefinder, it just kind of wanders around and does its own thing, and it's doing the same thing in the anime, and it's actually worth bringing up because Mimikyu is starting to get really messed up. Now, I know I'm a little late to the party because everyone already blew up about like Mimikyu's soaked, creepy looking costume and whatnot, but when I was doing my video for the Global Link, I was like, oh hey, it's like Mimikyu's disguise is busted, so I'll just do a broken thumbnail with that. I was like, wait, I need to talk about this, because this is some messed up stuff. It's like nightmare fuel and some of the creepiest things that Pokemon's done. Now, somehow, I only saw the pictures of the rag floating in the water and the paint kind of bleeding through and making it look all weird and stuff, but I didn't see the entire scene. Now, get ready, guys, because this scene is the most effed up thing I've ever seen in Pokemon. So we can see that the rag's kind of floating in the water, and Meowth has been weary of Mimikyu for a while now. So he's like, wait, what happened? Why is it just a rag there? And Mimikyu's actually having a fun time swimming until it goes and curses Meowth once again. And what the fuck, Pokemon? Like, and then that happens. So this is one of the most messed up things possible. I mean, that is Meowth's limp body floating in the water. It's like, he's dead, and then you can actually see his spirit fall back into his body as he comes back to life. Meowth died in the anime, and like, this is one of the jokes right now because the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime is super edgy and has some really messed up imagery sometimes. People are like, you know, half the anime, half the episodes for Pokemon Sun and Moon are going to be banned when it comes to America, or there's going to be so many scenes that are stripped out of it. I really hope that scene doesn't get stripped out because it's an amazing scene. I like it when Pokemon pushes the boundaries of what they can show, but this is where the Mimikyu lore deepens. So we get something super messed up, but it does go with the Pokedex entry. Its actual appearance is unknown. A scholar who saw what's under its rag was overwhelmed by terror and died from shock. And we've kind of seen Mimikyu interact with Meowth. Like, Meowth has seen under Mimikyu's cloak before, and it was a very similar thing. So it kind of shows that maybe Meowth is stuck somewhere between death and this curse we hear about, because on the official Pokemon website, there's that thing talking about people believe that anyone who sees its true form beneath a cloth will be stricken with a mysterious illness, and there's even that Mimikyu that's inside the Aether House that says, me curse you. So there's like this craziness between an illness, a curse, and just straight up death that happens when you see Mimikyu's true form. And since I was doing my videos where I was talking about what is Mimikyu, well, Mimikyu just gets even crazier because, okay, Pokedex entries, maybe they fudge it a little sometimes. You know, with the scholar that died, maybe that's a rumor with someone that was working with Mimikyu. You have this mysterious illness, you know, that's what people believe. People believe that whenever you see its true form, because people they're like, I've heard the rumors, I'm not gonna go and risk death, or I'm not gonna risk getting cursed right now by looking at Mimikyu. So there's a lot of weirdness going on. Now, what makes this really crazy is that the first time Meowth saw Mimikyu's true form, he had these similar effects and also died. It just wasn't as obvious that whenever you see a soul float back into a body, it's like, yeah, okay, he was dead. That's generally how that's implied right there. And also Meowth floating in the waters, very disturbing. But the first time it happened, he had like this crazy dream sequence slash curse where he was chasing after some of the sexiest sexy Pokemon that Pokemon has ever sexied into the anime, and then suddenly it just becomes like a nightmarish hell of ghost type Pokemon that are chasing him in a really strange abyss. And then one of the remarks is, like, the afterlife? Like, it's implied he had a life-ending experience and then was brought back to it, you know, because people can be pulled from the brink of death or be pulled out of death. And then, like, that's what they're like. So it's like, you were in the afterlife. Okay, Meowth, but that's pretty much what is representative here. And then the next time it happened, it got even more hardcore for the Meowth. And that just kind of shows, like, okay, Meowth died for a bit and then came back to life, which is why it's like, don't worry, guys, it's no spoilers. It's not even spoiling what happened in the episode. The episode is an absolutely fantastic episode, but that's just like a quick 15, 20-second clip of what happened. And it's like, Meowth died for a bit because they're just having these random Mimikyu moments that are doing really crazy things. But then let's go back to Mimikyu. So that's about Meowth and Mimikyu's lore and just kind of applying that things are dying and you're getting cursed, and like there's this, maybe that's the strange illness. Strange illness is that you simulate death while having like the most vivid hallucinations ever, and that can become absolutely nightmarish, like a bad trip or something. But when it comes to Mimikyu, I'm really interested in how this develops because, you know, every time Mimikyu's out, it keeps fighting Pikachu. It keeps showing this hatred towards Pikachu. I think the biggest question now is what happens if or when we see another Mimikyu in the anime. That's where things are gonna get crazy, because some people are just on the fence right now. It's like, nah, not all Mimikyu hate Pikachu, it's only Jesse's Mimikyu. It's only this one Mimikyu that has such a hatred for Pikachu. But if we see another Mimikyu, then that could tell the rest of the story. You know, if they go to the abandoned Mega Mart and then there's Mimikyu there and they automatically just start piling onto Ash's Pikachu, or whenever there's some kind of other Mimikyu interaction, that could show something. Or if a Mimikyu comes out to defend Pikachu from Jesse's Mimikyu, then we could also draw some more conclusions right there. But for the most part, it seems like this is how the Pokemon Company wants to represent Mimikyu in the anime. That a lot of the time, a Pokemon gets like one big episode about it and then a couple of cameos, but from that episode, you learn the most about that Pokemon's Pokedex entry. You learn the most about that Pokemon's lore. That is Game Freak making a statement like, this is how we want this Pokemon to be represented in the Pokemon world. And if they're only doing it with Jesse's Mimikyu, I guess it's not a stretch to say that Mimikyu in general hates Pikachu, and that this curse is a very extreme curse, and that's a very mysterious Pokemon just kind of wanders around and doing creepy things. Like whenever Mimikyu's on screen and it plays like that haunting kind of chime to it, you know, that's kind of like, this is the personality of Mimikyu. This is how Mimikyu is represented. Remember, it is still a ghost-type Pokemon. It is still a pretty freaky kind of Pokemon when you break down into it, and I'm really interested in seeing how that develops, like where we discover more about Mimikyu. It's like, alright, we see that it gets more and more mysterious, and that it does have this crazy power behind it, but what else? Where's the next level of this? And I do think that was really messed up what they did with the disguise, because they focus on the paint drippy, all messed up and mushed and warped face of the Mimikyu. Remember, it's like Mimikyu is what's under the costume, and it isn't the costume itself. So this demented, twisted Pikachu is like, yes, we were trying to represent Mimikyu as this idea that whenever you see it wandering around, you know, it almost looks like the drawn-on Pikachu face. The costume face is the one that's interacting. It's looking at things. It's the one that's looking at the camera, and that's where the focus of Mimikyu is on. So that got a little bit more interesting and complex as well, with just the way that this episode unfolded. And that's kind of all I have to say. So Mimikyu, fascinating little Pokemon right here, and it started off like, oh, we have the Mimikyu song, everything's all happy, it just wants to be loved, and then we get in the anime, and then we get the Pokedex entry, and then we realize, oh man, this thing's messed up, and it's kind of crazy. So we're going to see where this goes, what happens if more Mimikyu start to appear in the anime, and if we can get a better explanation of what's actually going on, because even with all this, we still don't know a lot. So hope you guys enjoy the video, hope you all have a nice day, thank you very much for watching.